So here's the most peculiar thing. When you go back to school in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, people question what you're doing. And people question the things that you are about, and they think that you're somehow going through a midlife crisis or something along those lines. And I think it's the most weirdest phenomenon, I think, because all you're doing is reading a few books and writing a few things. I have no idea why people do this. And I just want to give you some encouragement. If you're watching this and you're going back to school, or you're thinking of going back to school, to university, to college, to whatever, maybe you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s or even 70s and you're thinking of going back to college or university, I just encourage you to do that. I think it is one of these really fun moments in your life when you do get to learn a lot of things and your mindset does change a lot. Now, what I want you to think about when you do this is not necessarily think of it as a financial investment. I know that's tricky for us to say, and I'm extremely financially motivated. I'm a professor of business and I'm an engineer too, so it's a really kind of tricky thing for me to say. But, you do learn a tremendous amount about yourself. You learn a lot about this world that I think will change who you are. And as long as you're doing this wisely, so that's the important thing, to think about this wisely, to do it step by step, to do things in a very systematic manner and not kind of like, oh my God, I'm gonna go back to school and drop everything and just do, I'm gonna become, live in a dorm, and that's nonsense, right? So, but if you're doing this and you're pursuing education and you're thinking about things in a different way, you're learning a few things, it should not be frightening at all that you're actually reading a few books and learning a few ideas. What the heck? Honestly, I don't understand it. It is such a mystery to me, because we learn things every day and all you're doing is fast tracking that learning. What you're doing is taking the things that might have taken you 10 years to learn and you're condensing that into just a wee little bit to learn that particular thing. And, if you're curious, you have sort of insights about the world and you're thinking about different things, why not? It doesn't hurt. There's really nothing that's going to really... So let me take that back. So what's going to happen is you might have a lot of changes and you might see the world a lot differently. And I've seen this a lot. I've personally experienced this, is that when you see the world differently and everybody else doesn't see the world the way that you do, sometimes there's these weird clashes that you have, sort of cultural clashes that you have that you can't quite get, and it might take some time for people to sort of resolve that. Or maybe you have to get new friends or whatever that sort of see the same way that you do. But that's okay. I mean, that's life. That's wonderful that you're actually doing that. And that means that you're growing and you're developing and you're becoming just kind of pretty cool, I think, because, there's just a lot to learn in this world. And there's just so much. And that's all I want to say is just, if you're doing this and you're going back to school in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, it's pretty awesome that you're doing that. And you're really being a role model for the rest of the world to see this, and you're doing something. Now, again, do it wisely, because I think that there's a lot of mistakes that you can make along the way. And hopefully if you have questions or whatnot, you can feel free to ask them. But, I just want to say that you're being a real role model and you have a lot of life to live. Even if you're in your 80s, you have a tremendous amount of life to live, that you can see the world a little differently. Can you imagine if you spent the last 20 years of your life from 80 to 100 and maybe you wrote a paper that became, and you put it on the internet and it became, well recognized because you did that particular thing. Or you told your story because you're 80 years old and you're telling your life story that you didn't get a chance to do before, because taking that college course or taking that university course gave you a little bit of gumption or bravery to actually do that. That's pretty cool. Imagine what your grandkids are going to say if you have that, if you wrote that down, how special that is if you have that story written down and it's someplace that people can see and they're going to read that over and over and over again. Pretty cool, right? So if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, get at her. Go back to school. I think that you're going to learn a lot and it's going to be really fun.